This video is a logistics video, one of the big areas covered by this channel. Now in this particular one, we're taking two different series that I did and bringing them together. The Cache series and also a short one that I did a couple years ago called Feeding the Force. I did parts 1, parts 2. I wanted to do a part 3, but yeah, I started getting lost in the weeds when I started going in and calculating some of this stuff out, and I decided to just step back one step and just do it as more of an overview on it to give you guys the ideas. Now, this video is going to be part 3, logistics and cache plan for a group. So now we're taking the stuff from those other videos, throwing them together, and we're planning, okay, how much do we need and where for the future. Now, I have some basic info here first, and this is kind of what I base my stuff off of when I do logistics planning. Now, what you need to do first off is come up with a general meal plan. Now, in the military, we used to have 3 levels of rations when I was in. We had A rations, which was your regular foods, and I'll throw canned rations in there too, but those technically fell under like B rations. But when you got the stuff, it was an A ration according to the schedule. You had MREs, which were M's, and T rations, which were tray rations. Those were listed as T's. Now, when I was in the desert, a common breakdown for us for our meals was TMA. Breakfast was T ration, something that could be quick, brought out to us, we could eat it quick, and then head out to do what we needed to do. Our midday meal or lunchtime was MRE, something we got with us at breakfast, carried with us where we were going to be through the day. And when we got to the point that, hey, now it's lunch break, stop, eat your food. And then our dinner meal, after we were back at the end of the day, all missions done for the day, we would typically have a ration. Nothing spectacular. As I said, a lot of it was just stuff straight from a can that was thrown together by the battalion mess kitchen. And yes, the area I was at in the desert, we had our own battalion task force supplying us food through an MKT. We did not have contractors. So basically, what we did in the field in the States, that's what we ate in the desert. So you need to think along those lines the same way. So if you're doing your missions at night, during the night, you're coming back in the morning, maybe that's the time you're going to have that A ration, that warm meal that you're going to have before you go to sleep. Or you're starting out the day, you're going to be leaving early in the morning, you want everyone to have a nice cooked meal, have your A ration then. And then for during operations, think of captured MREs, freeze-dried pouches. And then I also put on there ramen in that category also, because the people that are back at your camp, your patrol base, why should they waste a freeze-dried meal? They're in one location, they have a little bit more time, dig that Dakota smoke hole, heat up some water, make a package of ramen, add some other stuff into it as you have available to pad it out. Add in some meat, some wild edibles, whatever. And then another thing that I include in my stuff, just to add variety, is the 4-person soup bags, like your Bear Creeks, your Shore Lunch, along those lines. Now for an individual for one day, 1 pound of dry rice per day, 8 ounces of beans, peas, or lentils. This alone by itself is around 1,900 to 2,200 calories depending on the beans. So you could do logistics planning if you're really hung up on calorie count, do that as your basis. And then anything else you add to that increases your calorie count. Remember, during survival situations and combat operations, it is not uncommon for you to require 2 to 3 times your normal daily requirements for calories per day in order to function. That 2,000 to 2,500 calories that you have during a normal day will leave you desperately hungry by the end of the day during combat ops. 1 meal per day for freeze-dried MRE or ramen. And then figure for every 4 people, 1 soup pouch. You can really easily take one of these 4-person soup bags, add extra water to them, turn it from 4-person into 8-person or 8 servings. And then to build up your calorie count, just add a little bit of extra or whatever you have available into it. When you break that down for 10 people, a number that's easy to calculate with, for 30 days, that comes out to 300 pounds of rice, 150 pounds of peas, beans, or lentils, 300 MREs, freeze-dried pouches, or ramen packs, and 75 bags of soup. And on that soup, that is just for having it at 1 meal each day. If you plan on 2 meals a day, it's 150 bags per 10 people per 30 days. Now, am I going to say that this is all you need? No. You are going to want to add variety in there. You are going to want to add other items to beef up the nutrition. So, that's where it comes into come up with a meal plan. Coordinate between your logistics, your quartermaster, and your mess section, your cooks. Come up with, say, 10 or 12, if you can knock it out, 15 to 30 different recipes that you can do in the field easily using some basic long-term storage items. Come up with that little recipe book, write that recipe book up, make sure each person in that mess team has it. Make sure that your logistics person, your quartermaster, has a copy of that also, so that you guys can sit down and coordinate out how much will you need for a set period of time. So, give you guys an example on this. Couple videos that I've done in the Guerrilla Cooking series. First off, Red Dawn baked beans. The recipe that is in the video, and I will put a link to it in the description. That recipe is basically for 4 to 6 people. Really say 4 people so that everyone gets a good serving. And that would be as their primary item for that meal. And then maybe figure have some rice on the side or some type of bread. But when you break it down for 4 people, Red Dawn baked beans, for beans you need 1 pound's worth, mustard powder 1 teaspoon worth, salt 1.5 teaspoons worth, black pepper 1/2 teaspoon, brown sugar 2/3 of a cup, minced onion 1 tablespoon, bacon bits around 4 tablespoons. You can do a little bit less in order to extend out your supplies. Barbecue seasoning 1 tablespoon. Now adjusted for 10 people for 1 meal comes out to 2.5 pounds of beans, 2.5 teaspoons of mustard powder, 3 3/4 teaspoons of salt, 1.5 teaspoons of black pepper, 1 2/3 cup estimated of brown sugar, 2.5 tablespoons of minced onion, 10 tablespoons around of bacon bits, and 2.5 tablespoons of barbecue seasonings. Now, when you go by package, I did break this down for considering on logistics. So for mustard powder for 10 people, that is 1/6 of a 2-ounce container. Each 2-ounce container has about 12 tablespoons. For brown sugar, 2-pound bag, you need about half of a bag of brown sugar per 10 people. And this is for one meal. Now, bacon bits. These are around 6 ounces in weight, and it comes out to about 3/4 of a bottle. Now, barbecue seasoning, they're all over the place as to the weight per container and how many servings, but it comes out to around 1/5 to 1/6 of a container per 10 people. Those numbers on how much of the container, how much of the package, that's the information your quartermaster or the person planning for your group, they need to know that. When they do the planning on that, they're always going to round up, because you can't buy half a bottle or half a bag. They have to round up to the next whole package for when they're doing their planning. And that's if you're just doing the meal once. If you're doing it multiple times, well, they take that half a bag or 1/3 of a container or 3/4 of a bottle and do it per meal, and then get that total and round up to the next size package weight. Now, pea soup, another one that I've done. For an individual, and this is something that I've actually been doing for myself when I plan this out and put together my one 1-week supply boxes as just a supplement for if needed. Split peas, that's 1 cup. About 8 ounces, half a bag of split peas. Bacon bits, 1 tablespoon. Minced onion, 1 tablespoon. Garlic powder, 1 teaspoon. Salt, pepper to taste. Now, when you actually bump it up for 10 people for a single meal, 10 cups of split peas, 10 tablespoons of bacon bits, 10 tablespoons of minced onion, 3 1/3 around tablespoons of garlic powder. Now that comes out to around 5 pounds of split peas for 10 people, 3/4 of a bottle of bacon bits per 10 people, 3 bottles of minced onion. Each bottle of minced onion is around 2 ounces and has 2 2/3 tablespoons of minced onion inside, so 3 bottles per 10 people. And garlic powder, it's around a 3-ounce container, 3-ounce bottle. If you're getting the small ones, easy to get in stores. Those have around 9 tablespoons inside, so it comes out to a little over a 1/3 of one of those bottles. And that's for 10 people for one meal. So you go through, come up with the recipes, figure it out as to, is it for one person or is it a group? If it is for a group, you then take your measurements, divide it by that number, that gives you the individual, times that by 10, and then you have your base count for 10 people. Then you can take that base count of 10 people, multiply accordingly for larger groups. Now, something I have not covered, but is very, very simple to make. Bannock bread or bannock biscuits. This is a basic recipe I got from a survivalist. And the ingredients in this are used with a lot of other basic breads recipes. Now, the recipe I came across was for 4 people, which created 8 biscuits. And for 4 people, 4 cups of flour, and it's white flour, 2 tablespoons of baking powder, your leavening agent, 1 teaspoon of salt, and then because you're trying to fry them if they're a biscuit, it calls for about 1/3 of a cup of fats or oils. And some of that fat and oil you add into the batter just to give it a little bit more oomph to the mix. Now breaking that down and then putting it as for 10 people for 1 single meal. This will create 20 biscuits. 10 cups of flour, 5 tablespoons of baking powder, 2.5 teaspoons of salt, and around 2/3 to 1 cup of fats or oils. Now, you're not going to store the fats or oils, and you may not want to even include baking powder inside your caches. That is up to you. I would say toss it in there because it increases the amounts of breads that you can make. Now, breaking down by packages, flour typically comes in a 5-pound bag, which has between 18 to 20 cups of flour. So for 10 people, that's half a bag of flour per 10 people. Now, baking powder is around an 8-ounce container with 5 to 6 tablespoons of baking powder in that container. So 1 container of baking powder per 10 people. And then salt, you're getting that from your 40-ounce container or 26-ounce container, whatever it is. And you use that with multiple things. So you just add extra salt in your stuff. Now you can make hoe cakes or ash cakes or fire cakes. It's another basic survival bread, and all that is in that is flour, salt, and water. And then you mix that up. It's just about the same amount of flour, 1 cup per person, just a little bit of salt in there, and just enough water mixed in to make a thick dough. Flatten that out to no more than 1/3 of an inch or 1/2 of an inch in height, and then you put that next to your fire or put it over the coals of your fire, and then you flip it over enough times to make sure it cooks thoroughly. I will do a link to a video on that in the description also. So remember, this is for 1 single meal. 1 single meal's worth of bread of 2 biscuits worth. So these numbers will definitely be a lot larger when you're calculating how much you're going to need. Now, preserving meat. You're probably not going to have preserved meats inside your caches. You might have TVP, but TVP is expensive. Now, if you are able to hunt, fish, or snare small game in your area, you should have salt inside your caches to preserve the meat. Now, I did some looking around, and it says for salting fish, you need between 6 to 10% of the weight of the fish in salt. And that salt must be spread evenly, as close as possible, over that fish to draw the moisture out and reduce the size of the fish. The drier it is, the longer term it'll store. If you do not have enough salt, you're going to leave moisture in there, you're going to grow mold, and the chance of bacterial growth goes up. The salt that you put in the meat will cut down on chances of bacteria surviving, and its main purpose, draw out the moisture. For red meats, beef, venison, elk, moose, bear, whatever it is, it looks like between 3 to 5% minimum of the weight of the meat that's being preserved in salt. Now I will make the note here on the salt. Do not use iodized. It is highly recommended that you use plain salt or rock salt or kosher salt. Apparently, the iodine and iodized salt can mess up with the preservation process. If you had no other choice, you probably could preserve meat with iodized salt, but I would not do large amounts of it. If you're planning on doing larger amounts of meat, you really need to get that plain salt and have that on hand. Now, something else that could be very handy to have to serve in your meals as part of your meal plan, mashed potatoes. Now, mashed potato flakes typically come around a 27-ounce box, but there's different size boxes. But the 27-ounce box says it's 38 servings. Now, each serving for an individual is about 1/3 of a cup of dried, which comes out to around 1/2 of a cup once it's prepared. Personally, I think that's kind of small in a survival situation. I would be thinking about 1 cup's worth of potatoes per person as a standard serving. So do adjustments accordingly. But when I was going through figuring this stuff out, it comes out to 6 2/3 cups of potato flakes per 10 people. And that comes out to, and then you typically want to add some type of gravy to it. Gravy packets look like they average about 4 servings per packet. Most of those are typically just add water, maybe a little bit of fat. So for 10 people, you figure 3 packets. So, and remember, that is per meal per 10 people. Do some of the numbers, figure it out on your own. I know I figured this out. I don't remember if this is for that double, the 1 cup's worth prepared, or if that was according to serving size. Because I was going through looking up multiple things and I didn't always write down all the math explanation in my notes here. Now, some other things that would be very helpful for you for including inside your caches for groups. Basic oatmeal. Oatmeal, it comes in multiple different weights and containers, but the numbers I have here are off of an 18-ounce container or package, which comes out to 1/2 cup dry per person. Add water, comes out to about 1 cup prepared. So for 10 people for 1 meal, about 5 cups of dried oatmeal. And that comes out to about 1 canister per 10 people. Now, another thing that I didn't get put on here because it came out with it after I did the posters, pancake mix. You probably don't want oatmeal every breakfast, every morning. You want something else. Well, you could do sweet rice using part of your rice ration per day. Another option is your complete pancake mix. All it is add water. Now, the standard box, and they do come in multiple sizes, but standard around 32 ounces, has 16 servings inside. Comes out to 2 pancakes per person. The estimate is around 28 pancakes per box. And each pancake is measured out to around 4-inch diameter, estimated. So for 10 people, 2 cups worth of pancake mix per 10 per meal, giving them 2 pancakes each. Are you going to have syrup in the field? Not unless you tapped it and boiled it down yourself. But you can eat pancakes dry. I've done it many times in the field. I'm sure every other soldier has. You could also add some type of fruit in there. get a hold of some freeze-dried fruit, soak it in some water before the meal, and then issue out, say, 1 or 2 spoons of that over the top of the pancakes and the mess kit for the person. Next up, freeze-dried veggies. I only looked up 2 different ones on here, the most common. Green beans and corn. These are number 10 cans, your 1 gallon cans. Serving size, dry, is half a cup of each. And they estimate that each 1 gallon can of freeze-dried green beans makes about 19 servings. 1 can of freeze-dried corn makes about 22 servings. So for 10 people, half the can per meal. And that's as an actual side to the meal, not added into it. If you're adding the stuff into what you're making, you may not need as much. Pastas. This was something that was brought up to me to mention in here. The most common ones that you probably would be able to store easily in the field is Elbro macaroni and spaghetti. Elbros, a standard serving size is 1/2 of a cup dry. Each 2-pound bag, just trying to find my note quick. Yep. Each 2-pound bag has about 16 servings inside. So for 10 people, you're looking at about 1 pound's worth of pasta, give or take. And that's not going to make a lot. Adjust accordingly for your recipes. You know, do some experimentation, figure out how much you actually need for your people to actually get them full and give them what they need per meal. Now spaghetti, 2-pound package, 16 servings per package, and then per person it's supposed to be around 2 ounces of pasta. That's not much, but it gives you something to start with for planning at least. Now something that would definitely come in handy, especially with baking if you're doing some type of breads and stuff, whole egg powder. This is not your scrambled eggs. Also comes in a 1 gallon can. According to their instructions on the backs of these cans, 2 tablespoons of dry whole egg powder equals approximately 1 egg, and each number 10 can has about 78 eggs worth inside them, about. Now, tomato powder. You got pasta, you're probably going to want some type of sauce with it, some type of homemade marinara or whatever in the field. You're going to need the basics to do it. They do make tomato powder. It is sold in 1 gallon cans. It's also sold in bags also. According to the information on a 1 gallon can, 1 teaspoon dry is a single serving with 329 servings per can. Don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but take that basic information, come up with a field spaghetti sauce or field marinara sauce. Take your tomato powder, add in your dry seasonings. Add in your Italian seasoning, your oregano, your garlic powder, your minced onion. Mix it up, get the consistency you want, serve it with the pasta. Butter powder, something brought up to me by Ron Stryker, that he's been thinking a lot on this. Butter powder is something that also will come in handy in the field for your basic food preparation, just to expand out the different types of recipes you can do. Once again, number 10 can, according to it, a single serving is 2 tablespoons of dry, each can 74 servings. Powdered milk can be used with baking, can also be used as drink. Powdered milk sucks if you have to drink of it. Those of us in Gen X know this a lot from when we were growing up and our families were poor. Our parents may not have been able to afford regular milk, but they could afford powdered milk. So we drank this a lot. You can survive through it. It doesn't taste great. You just drink it down. But according to package of powdered milk, 39-ounce package is 32 servings. Comes out to 1/3 cup dry. We'll prepare up to 1 cup prepared. 32 servings a bag. Now, we got some basic numbers now. So what we do, like I said, you're going to go through, you're going to create a potential menu for 1 week or 2 weeks, depending on how you're figuring your stuff out. Come up with different recipes you can do, and then take that information, plug it into your numbers for what should go in a cache. So, like I've done, come in here first with something that will give us the base calories needed. It'll give you the appropriate amount of carbohydrates and most of the proteins you need, but it's not going to be complete. You're also going to be missing your veggies, so you got to plan on adding veggies in there. That's part of where the soup bags come in. Add some veggies into it. And then you got your patrol or midday ration. Now for bread, the bannock bread, I did break that down. In order to provide 2 biscuits a day for 10 people for 30 days, you require 75 pounds of flour, which comes out to 15 5-pound bags of flour. In order to do the bannock bread, for that 2 biscuits per person per day, that comes out to 30 canisters of baking powder per 30 days for 10 people. Giving you an idea on how you take that basic information for that recipe, plan it out as to how many days do you want this? Do you want it every 3rd day, every 5th day, every other day, whatever it is? Take those numbers and then you add it on to what the base is, your base amounts that you're going to have for your 30 days. Add it on to that. Then you take that information and you start coming up with your cache cases or cache barrels. How much fits inside? And then you have to figure, okay, this case will make X amount of this. Or I need to also add in there so many packages of this inside the cases to make this. Get the idea? Standardize your stuff. That's one of the things I've pointed out. Standardize your cases. What I do, I have an A case, which is a group main. That basically gives the seasonings, drink mixes, and that type of stuff as a base for the group. And then I throw some other stuff in there with it. I have a B case, which is a bulk case. And each B case is rice and beans. X number of cases of those per 10 people for 30 days. And then I also have a C case, which is an individual rations case. That's primarily freeze-dried meals and ramen noodles. You're not going to be out on a mission every single day. And quite frankly, you're a guerrilla soldier, you're not a counterinsurgent. If you need to take a little bit more time for your meal so that people can heat up water for ramen versus freeze-dried, you can do it. You're not going to have some general yelling at you saying you're taking too long on the mission. Just don't waste too much time. And something I should have mentioned in the past in some of the videos, think of drinks. Add in there stuff like fruit punch, coffee, cold tea mix, hot tea, cocoa, lemonade, your different types of Kool-Aids, whatever. Things to mix it up. Something that I've been starting to throw into some of my cases are the individual drink packets that are supposed to be like 1 packet per 8 ounces of water. Well, that comes out to, say, 1 packet per canteen cup. So you're out in the field, heating up the water for your freeze-dried meal, and then at the same time, you got your canteen cup off to the side. Make yourself a packet of cocoa or a cup of tea, or mix yourself up a packet of fruit punch. Basically doing what the military does, except you're using cheaper items that you're able to get to off the shelf in the store. Now, we're going to go into our hypothetical here on actually planning out the caches. We now know how many cases we have to cover for a particular time period for the group. We've gone through, we've done the numbers. Now we got to plan how to put it out there. Now, a patrol base, which is what you're going to use on the mission. Military standard is you're supposed to be there 1 to 2 days maximum. For a guerrilla soldier, I'd say a maximum of 5 days. But you should be looking at 2 to 3 days as your average. Why? Because you're going to have to move into the location. You're going to have to set up your patrol base. Make sure to have your LPOPs, warning devices, all that stuff set up, and that's going to take time. That's going to be like 1 day in and of itself. And while that's going on, you are going to send forward your initial recon to be the eyes on your target area. Whether it is watching a particular roadway to try to hit a supply convoy, or they're observing a combat outpost. They're getting that initial information. Once you have your patrol base set up, that's when you're going to deploy the main part of your recon. They're going to go up there. They're going to meet up with that initial batch you sent up there, those initial scouts, and then you're going to do your reconnaissance for, say, 24 hours. Maybe you want to go 48 if it's going to be a raid. That's where that 5 days comes in. But if it's an ambush, you moved in on day 1. Day 2, you're observing the target site. Day 3, that's when you're hitting the convoy. Once the ambush is done, everyone meets up and you move on to your next patrol base location. So before that ambush would deploy from the patrol base, they're already taking care of their part of the patrol base, getting stuff broken down, stuff packed back up in their rucksacks, erasing sign that they were there. And then that group that's left behind, that half a fire team or 1 fire team, they're the ones that finish with pulling in the early warning devices and that stuff, breaking it down. Then they move forward, meet up with the rest of that patrol up at the ORP, and they assist with the security at the ORP while the rest of your element is doing the ambush. Ambush is done, you pull back, meet up with them at the ORP, and then you move on to your next patrol base location, and then that counter starts over again. So if you're putting in caches for a patrol base, plan for 3 to 5 days for the appropriate size element. Whether it's a 10-man squad, a 20-man platoon, a 30-man platoon, a 40-man platoon, or somewhere inside that number. Always round up. If you have 12 people in that element, when you're planning the logistics, plan it for 20. That gives you additional supplies to play with, gives you a little bit extra time. And if you have other people that end up tagging along, they're already accounted for. Now, what if it's a patrol base? Patrol base, I've mentioned before, occupy for a max of 30 days. Well, 4 weeks roughly for a 30-day. So what we'll do there, if we put everything 30 days supplies, 30 days worth of supplies in one location, If we lose that location, we are fucked, aren't we? We've now lost all our food, our extra ammo, extra medical, spare gear, everything is gone. So what should you do? Imagine this is the area our patrol base is going to be in. So we've scouted the location. Our patrol base will be in here, or our base camp. And then we go through, we've scouted it, we know that, hey, this is a potential area for a base camp. And then we pick, where should we put the caches? Well, maybe that first week of supplies, we put it right there. So then inside this area in here, where the patrol base is going to be, we put in our cases and spread them around in clusters. So we have 1 week's worth right here. We're going to be in this area generally for a month, 4 weeks. So then maybe we plan for another week's supply up here. Maybe another week's supply way over here. And another week's supply way down here. And then each of these locations, we don't put it in one giant pile. We're going to break it up. So maybe we'll have some of the cases up here, some over here, some here, some over here. Maybe in this one over here, because of the terrain and that stuff, we have, say, one really good large hidden spot here, and then we have the rest of it broken up into smaller spots. You get the idea. So this way, the counterinsurgent, or if it's a survival group, bandits, thieves, finds that one batch. They don't find everything. So you only lose a small percentage. Worst case scenario, you lose 1 week's worth of supplies. Optimally, you lose just a couple days because they found just the one. Now, there's a movie called Panic in Year Zero. I did post it over on BitChute. I'll put the link to it inside the description also for this video. In that video, a family is going on vacation. Nuclear war happens right after they're leaving the city. They're now up in the mountains. They're on the way to the camping site that they've been going to for years. Nuclear war occurs. They see the blinding flash behind them in the rear view mirrors. They now have gone from vacation to survival mode. When they get to the area that they're going to camp at, they change the exact spot. Instead of going into campsite, they go to a cave. And then what they do, they break up their supplies because of the possibility of marauders. And then each person in the family knows where each batch of supplies is at. So if they're caught out foraging, fishing, whatever it is, because they were real high up in the mountains, marauders come across them, they're hungry, they want food, you take them by the closest batch of food that's there, and the family only loses a few days worth of food. They don't lose everything. That's the same type of concept you need to think about for your base camps or your survival retreats. Don't have all your eggs in one basket. That's a very, very, very important phrase when it comes to logistics for a guerrilla. You don't want to lose everything in one single operation. If a counterinsurgent comes through, they somehow find a cache, maybe you just lose the one here. If they keep searching, the base camp isn't here, they're just sweeping through the area looking for supplies. Maybe they find this one here, maybe this one over here, you still have a week's worth in this area, a week's worth in this area. So plan out a standardized general outline for your meal plan for your group. Figure it for the number of people you have. If you have only 8 people, plan for 10. If you have 15, plan for 20. If you have 41, plan for 50. That gives you your numbers of what has to go in cases. Then take that information, start deciding on what to put in a standardized case and round up. You may only need 57 packages of something, but you can fit 64 inside the cases. That gives you 7 more that you can play with. You always want to overestimate what you need, and when you're figuring your stuff out there, under-report what's actually on hand. So you could have, say that you could tell people this is 1 week's worth of supplies, but in actuality what's actually in those cases, maybe you have a week and a half. Or if you ration it out really closely, you can take that 1 week, make it 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks. There you go, a very long lesson on planning for logistics for a group. Round up at all times, okay? Round up when calculating the number of people that you're supplying. Round up to the next full package weight. So if you need 1.5 packages, well, you put 2 packages inside your cache. And then when you're doing your numbers, doing your actual stuff, putting it in the ground, calculate, round it down. You may be putting in a week's and a half worth of food in one location, but you report it as only 1 week to give yourself more room to play with. And if unanticipated people are there, you can still supply them. A piece of advice I got as a young sergeant from an old first sergeant. He gathered up all us newer NCOs when we were out in the field in Korea. He did kind of an impromptu first sergeant's time out in the field because this was the first time the company had been together in one location at one time. He called all the corporals together and the sergeants, the E5s. And he told us that when you are planning to feed a unit, feed your platoon, always round up. If the company has 100 people, he ordered 125 persons worth of food. If there was 127 people in the company, he ordered enough for 150. That way, everyone always got enough food. Because when you're serving the food, you're not always going to be exact when you're spooning it out. And you don't want that last person or 2 people in line to get up there and get half rations. You still want them to get that full serving. You want there to be, at the end of that meal, the mess sergeant saying, okay, I got a little bit left, who needs a little bit more? And then you issue it out to that person. Because there's always going to be that one kid who's still going to be hungry after he ate everything. So there you go. Things to consider for yourselves and for your group. I gave you some general advice. Now the headache is on to you. Now you can go through, plan it according to dietary requirements. Try to figure it out for total calories per day, total servings of veggies, total servings of meats, total servings of grains. That's what screwed me up, why it took me so long to do this video, and I decided I'm just going to back off, give you guys the basics on it, pass the headache off on you because it matters to you anyway. Everyone's diet is different, and you guys are going to plan according to what you guys eat what you need. Now, for all my engineer brothers and the Patriot Militia movements, always remember essayons.